What is going on, everybody? Welcome back once again to the #1 live tuning show in the all of unknown everything bottom of the ocean everywhere. How is everybody? Kind of got up to the office a little bit late tonight. It's been a week. It's been one of those weeks. Fighting a headache. It's all the allergies being terrible. So, you know, I am rocking my my Sandman shirt. Those who know will know. Those who know will know. So, fighting carburetors. But we're going to do the sniper this weekend. Done with the carburetor. It's coming off. The sniper swap is being installed. And then over here on the test bench, I've been playing around with the Infinity some. It's tangled up on all kinds of stuff. I got too many ECUs in the office. Do I have a video on transient fuel tuning? I think I do. Depends on the generation, Schmidthead. You're talking about third gens, fuel wall impact, stuff like that. Gen 4 transient. You know, a lot of that's going to be on volumetric efficiency on a Gen 4. Making sure your VE table is dialed in will help your transient fueling a lot because it uses a predictive algorithm to basically preemptively start fueling whenever it sees a transient state on the throttle. Tommy, thank you. Hopefully they were all good mentions, but thank you for joining the live show. Should learn some tuning on the Eco. Speaking of it, not necessarily EcoBoost, but we have a Dodge coming into the family. Justin is going to look at it Saturday. I can't remember if it's a Scat Pack or not. It may just be an RT. But hopefully we'll be doing some Dodge tuning very soon. How effective is traction control for a street-only turbo car? Davis box or add-on for Holley HP ECU. I mean, depends on the traction control strategy. To really have a strong traction control strategy, you have to have driven speed versus undriven wheel speed to determine wheel slip, and then it's how it applies it and the controls that you have to be able to, basically what it's going to do is pull timing to try and get it back into traction. So there's some that are rudimentary that work but might be a little aggressive. Chris has been fighting this car that runs good for 10 minutes, then starts hunting idle. I don't know what to do. No more. Please help. Gen 3 LS1 Trans Am. Chris, first make sure to set your cylinder air mass bias to 0 so it's utilizing IAT temperatures alone. I will, James. Make sure the ECT correlation or temperature modifications aren't causing issues. A lot of times that will happen if the thing runs good at startup. Then as it gets warmed up and the ECTs get up higher, it might start having issues. But you also need to pay attention to your airflow at idle and make sure that your base idle airflow tables are set up right. Nice. Y5 is literally in the middle of doing a tune right now with a little garage in the background. RT Plus, there you go. Justin chimed in. Getting an RT Plus. We'll get the ECU unlocked. We'll dive in, look at the different tables, and he's probably going to end up supercharging it. If I were a betting man, I would bet he's going to want to supercharge it. Probably next spring, though. But we'll see if we can have some fun and just take a look at some of the systems. We'll dive into them a little bit more since we have something that we can actually see cause and effect on. And we might even touch on some of the neural network stuff on there. Justin Anderson, I don't have my original tune. How can I get 2-bar? Well, even if you don't have your original tune, you should be able to pull the tune that you have out. If it doesn't have an OS patch it on already, you should be able to OS patch it. If it does already have an OS patch on it, you need to find the original OS for that ECM, find a comparable file that has that OS on it, and then use that one to build out your 2-bar on it. You may have to eat a credit on that one, though. Tim says, ignition timing 408 LS supercharged. What's a good starting point with timing on pump gas? On pump gas 93, I would probably, depending on how much boost you're running, Tim, mid-teens, 15, 16 degrees, as long as you're under, 13, 14 PSI, I'd say. Hey, Ted. The Ozman asked a good question. What do I need to get the Pro? Why would I need to get the Pro feature? The only thing that the Pro feature on the MPVI2 provides you with is the analog input. All the other features that they've promised have not come to fruition. Luckily for them, they literally put on their listing saying coming some point in time, no specifications, or else they'd have a class action lawsuit on their ass over this ordeal. And you only get 2 analog inputs, which is another huge ripoff. Technically, it does have CAN bus on it, but I don't know that there's very many devices that will actually connect on the CAN bus through the Pro feature set and pull those parameters. I did some testing with them with the micro squirt to try and bring back parameters from the micro squirt, and they never could get it working. So, is a wideband analog. Yep. Anything that's not a light switch is analog. Well, that's not true, but if you're talking about inputs or outputs, 90% of your inputs or outputs, they're either on or off, which are digital, or an analog, which has a span. Don't use serial output, Jay Neff. You're going to have to elaborate because serial output works great. I personally like serial better because you don't have to deal with any kind of analog scaling on it. In fact, I've been dealing with a guy this week alone that his analog does not, or his gauge does not match up to his scanner, which generally indicates a bad analog signal. Ah, gotcha. Don't use analog. Yeah, I mean, analog's kind of, it's not worth the money, and I would stick with serial because the way that these things work is that you've got a device, you've got a sensor, that is a reference voltage sensor that then outputs an analog signal out. So literally it sends power to the sensor powers up, it has a controller in itself that then converts the readings to an analog out that goes into the gauge. The gauge then takes that reading and does the math to convert that over to lambda. Now, if you have the gauge displaying anything besides lambda, it's still reading in lambda. It then does the calculation in the gauge itself to convert it over to something like AFR. Then if you want to go to a serial output, it then has to convert that value yet again to serial output, or analog output, and then you bring that in as an analog output, which then could have some skewed effects based on transient voltage, stuff like that you then have to bring in and convert yet again. Whenever you're doing it serial, as soon as the chip and the gauge does the calculation from the signal from the sensor, it gets a number. That number is written into a holding register and then sent out on the serial bus. And so the value does not change from that point on. There's no outside factors that can affect that value. Nick Morrell, any input on virtual torque tuning on Gen 4 motor? I wouldn't bother, Nick. Virtual torque on the Gen 4s don't really do as much. You can do about everything that you're going to want to do as far as virtual torque is concerned through just torque management, because it is not a torque-based ECU where all of the spark and throttle commands are based off a torque request. P. King, can you ghost cam on Gen 3 Silver Island Camelope? Yeah, you can do that on anything if you screw the tune up bad enough. Jack the timing up, starve it for a little bit of air. She'll start blah, 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 blah. Oh, LT4 Gen 5. Sorry, I thought I read it Gen 4. Nick, I've got plenty of videos on Gen 5 torque tuning out there. Look literally underneath the Gen 5 tuning playlist. There will probably be 2 or 3 videos that talk about torque tuning and the different parameters and stuff that you do need to get into and what you don't need to. And I'll be honest with you, you know, it's a lot of that is probably still in driver demand and torque management and less in the virtual torque stuff. If you get in and start messing with virtual torque things, there's some things that you will fix, but you will often cause more issues whenever you start messing with virtual torque. Tony says, what do you turn back on after an SD tune on Gen 3? You want to go back into your airflow tab under dynamic and set a dynamic shift point on the left-hand row there. So depending on where you want it at, 3,000 or so, you know, maybe shut it back off at 2,800, and then you need to look at your steady state and go back to probably what your stock values are for steady state. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it. Hey, Smokey J. JNF, that is correct on the Gen 4. If your air model is good, your torque model is going to be good on Gen 4. On Gen 5, not necessarily the case. I'm in Pittsburgh. Can't you tell from my accent? You might be the first person that's tuned in on a dirt bike. So, Browns fan. No, I could care less about professional football. I'm from Oklahoma. So, go Pokes. What do you think about dynamic airflow versus speed density? Well, I think dynamic airflow is the correct way of doing it because you have both systems in play. You've got mass airflow and volumetric efficiency, and it is doing the calculations to determine what is the best fueling strategy at the time. That being said, a lot of guys, speed density became a thing on the third gens because it was easy. And you could do away with things like the mass airflow sensor. And then on the fourth gen, speed density became very hard. And so everybody started doing mass airflow only. I don't necessarily agree with either of them. I like dynamic. We will be doing the sniper this weekend. So, literally ready. I got to go out, throw the draggy in the Nova with the carb on there. We'll get a 8th mile time or 2 on there. Just see where it's at, then we'll throw the sniper on and have some fun. That's the least. Thank you, brother. Yes, transitional fuel is way better with both on. One more question. I turned off my rear O2 sensors, but getting a front O2 heater issue. Could just be a bad sensor, Tony. Try swapping your sensors and see if the air moves. Eating truck stop spaghetti. That sounds sketchy. Oh, no, I would never say go Sooners. I hate the Sooners. And if you want to unsubscribe because I hate the Sooners, have at it. You will not hurt my feelings. Where would you set the cutover to MAF from SD on a Gen 4 6.2 CTSV? You know, I'd probably set it around 3,000. I like to actually shift it down. It's around $4,000 often from the factory. I like to bring it down a little bit. And that way you can not have to stress so much about your volumetric efficiency tables. You still want those things to be within a sanity range of accurate because there's a lot going on behind the scenes with them. But at the same time, we can dial that MAF curve in and be, you know, like get that whole curve at like 3% rich, which is perfect. Getting the whole volumetric efficiency table in to where it is just slight green across the map is impossible because of the way the zones are set up. And so we want those things to be in the realm of sanity, but at the same time, we do want to go ahead and switch over to the mass airflow whenever we get to a point where we think that there is consistent air being delivered across the mass airflow sensor. It's good to see you, Vaseline. Man, I've lived in Texas so many times, it's not even funny. I mean, I just call Oklahoma North Texas. Yeah, PMAZ, it's been getting some chilly days and some warm days. Is it okay to only use wideband on one side of a long tube header? Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Because you've got to look at specifically whenever we're tuning with a factory ECU, we really don't have any cylinder offset on fueling. If you were to go to a standalone, where you can literally tune every cylinder, then you might consider adding another wideband so you can do bank-to-bank tuning or even cylinder-to-cylinder tuning. But if you're getting to the point where you're worried about cylinder-to-cylinder tuning, you are making significant amounts of horsepower. Would you turn off all four? Well, you turn them off during the tuning, Tony, then whenever you're done, turn them back on. That way you still have that low-speed correction. Off of power enrichment correction. Oh, interesting. So, Guillermo says that HP Tuners released a new beta that includes intake volume finally for the 2019 E92s. Good to know. I normally put mine on the driver's side only. MAF only, and dialing into lower frequencies, gradual pedal increase inputs reduces airflow with frequent drop until engine stumbles. Seems 0 to 1% pedal driver demand. Torque goes 4 to 0. Ooh, James, that's an interesting question. Now, part of that's probably just going to be that the MAF doesn't like coming off pedal like that, especially if you're on a cammed vehicle, because you're going to get some reversion where the airflow literally stops in the intake track, and that's probably what you're seeing. So I would smooth that area out with the numbers that you know are good above there. Get to a certain point where that MAF starts reading consistently, and then smooth out down below that. Then you're going to need to go into volumetric efficiency and work on that area, because it'll be relying a lot on volumetric efficiency. Specifically tuning a 2010 Camaro S 36-speed to work as standalone. Oh man, not really Wi-Fi. All the videos for that stuff is probably going to square you away. I mean, you can swap over and check the bank after, the second bank after you've done bank one with the wideband, or turn on your narrow bands and see if they're skewing off, because if they're skewing off, if one is higher than the other, could be an indication. At the same time, narrow bands are a great way to determine if maybe you have a lazy injector or something. Yeah, pinholes are the enemy of wideband, especially whenever they're tight enough that you don't know that the pinhole's there until it warms up, and then all of a sudden you start going, going lean. How long have I been doing this? I've been tuning cars for, my first time I started tuning was probably around 2001. So I started tuning on Subarus way back in the day, and I've been doing GM platforms pretty much exclusively since around 2008, 2007, that area. Mobile Detail Doctor, buy the standard version. Don't buy Pro. No reason to buy Pro. In fact, go back to the beginning of this video after we're done streaming, and I'll talk about that even more. Calling for 10 inches of snow this weekend. Yeah, Catan, the only issue with using the rear O2 holes is that there is going to be some transient times where the sensor is not caught up to what's actually happening in the combustion. And so for driving around town and stuff like that, you might chase your tail a little bit. Any plans for an in-depth 6L80? Not really. And I've said it from the get-go, I'm not really the trans guy. I can walk you through going through bumping some pressures up, adjusting shift points, things like that. Outside of that, I am not a trans tuner. Recommended wideband install locations: 19C7 LT1 stock manifolds. You want to do it in front of any cats and after the collector. So pretty close to the collector. I like to literally put my wideband bungs into the side of the collector. Second machine shop. Hold on to that MPV1. Make them peel it out of your cold dead hands. Yeah, I had a, GC8 that I turbocharged. Then I had a '05 STI for a while. What should I set the TAC output to on this LC? I honestly do not know off the top of my head what the settings even are for the TAC output. Oh, that's not bad. 6 inches behind the collector is not too bad then. I mean, you can have exhaust pulses skewing the reading down low, but you're talking real low. Wideband needs to be before any cats. Cats will skew your wideband readings. Tommy Spencer, good question. I have the Innovate dual wideband, can never get to, never tune the carb to get both side AFRs to be the same. And you are correct. It most likely has to do with the intake. A lot of those things, how the air gets drawn down into the intake based on which cylinder is pulling in air at what time, can create some vortexes down in the intake right below the carb that can cause some cylinders to run a little bit leaner than others. If you are tuning both, or if you have both banks though, generally you want to tune to your lean bank, which means you will have a richer bank whenever you're done, but at least you know all banks are going to be within the safe zone. Had it for a year and never worked on it. What the hell, John? Super slow. You are doing one of the things I hate doing the most, and that is wheels. Anything on a rim. LSX HTS says, are tuning platforms between Dodge, Chevy, Ford widely different? Or are they pretty much the same to tune? Okay, so they are very widely different, but the fundamentals of them are all exactly the same, because you have to break it down and remember at the base level, we are tuning air, fuel, spark. That's it. You know, that's like all we're dealing with. Now, there's subsystems that each ECM do a little bit differently, and it's learning how those different systems take different data points and interpolate those out into fueling calculations and stuff like that. That is the hump to learn. But at the end of the day, you will generally find something like, if it has a mass airflow sensor, you will find a mass airflow scalar table that says at this hertz, this is this equivalent to this many pounds per hour of air. It's going to take that value, that pounds per hour of air, do a calculation based off your fuel flow, injector flow, stuff like that, to determine the pulse width of the injectors to meet the amount of fuel required to hit that commanded AFR or EQ ratio. Same more thing on volumetric efficiency. A lot of them will still have volumetric efficiency in some way, shape, or form. It may be called different things. And then you can really get off into the weeds, and there will be different things like, torque management. Different platforms will have different names, but it does the same thing. Whereas we use immediate and predicted in the GM world, Dodge uses fast and slow torque, which is the same thing. Fast is going to be fuel and spark, much like immediate on a GM, whereas slow is going to be airflow, just like predicted. So, how rich can a narrow band read? Depends on the brand, but I want to say, 9.7 is what AEMs generally max out at. Awesome, brother. Keep me posted. Did you hear? Did you find out what was? I'm talking with Liquid 10 experience here. Did you find out what exactly had happened yet? Had they torn into that? Had a weird situation that acted like maybe a blown head gasket, but we weren't quite sure yet. It does not necessarily have a wideband on both banks. Yeah, depending on where your collector's at, if you're running the factory headers, you can be a little bit further off the collector on those. If you're running long tubes, you probably want them right by the collector. Can you properly tune without a dyno? Yes, you can, John Smith. In fact, you can tune. I would venture to say, people will disagree with me, but you can tune better without a dyno, because when you're on a dyno, you're not driving how you drive your car. So why not tune it how you drive your car? Tony, can I use my wideband for a narrowband reading? Some have a narrowband output on them. Not all of them do, though. You have to realize narrowband is 0 to 1 volts. A wideband is 1 to 5. 0 to 5 technically, but it normally reads in a 1 to 5 range. Front main seal, and I guess that would make some sense if the front main seal blew out and some oil got around onto the exhaust headers or something, causing the smoke that you were seeing. That's why I was worried about what kind of catch can system that you're running on there and whether or not the I'm drawing a blank, crankcase pressure was getting out properly or not, because really shouldn't be blowing that front main seal out. But yes, Katana is correct. The only thing that you really need a dyno for is getting timing perfect. Some vehicles, now I don't know that there's any vehicles that will adjust fuel trims based on the rear O2s. Now they will use the rear O2s to do a sanity check versus the front O2s to make sure the front O2s are working properly. But adjusting fuel off of something that is post-cat would not be ideal. Without a dyno, how are you able to hit those weird spots on the VE table that seem impossible to? How would you hit those weird spots if you can't replicate those on the road? So, you're talking about tuning parts of the table that you can't hit in any way, shape, or form whenever you're driving the vehicle. Not a bad idea, Liquid 10. And that might be part of it. I'd have to go in and look at the ZL1 factory setup and see what they're doing to scavenge PCV. We're at 21 degrees of timing on 93 with 11 PSI boost. No knock retard, good or dangerous? I mean, you are bleeding edge, I would say, at 11 PSI at 21 degrees. But if the engine does not hate it, you know, it'll be fine. The last time, whenever I tore the axle out of the truck, I was running 17 or 18 degrees at 26 pounds of boost, to give you an idea. But, you know, that's also lowered compression ratio, stuff like that. What's the thing about EGR delete? Some recommend it, some don't. You know, I don't really get into anything that is emissions based, because you see how anybody that does stuff like that in the diesel world right now gets called before Congress, it seems like. So Andrew is correct. A lot easier with a manual, or putting your automatic in manual mode to hit weird areas outside your normal driving range. That's normally what I would suggest. And then you get a picture of how your VE table, your speed density table should look, and you can blend out from the points where you have good data to cover areas where you don't have data. And Kyle, I'm going to have to do some research on that, because that makes absolutely no sense to me, but I'm sure people smarter than me decided that you could do some kind of tuning off the post catalytic sensor. But that's scary, because you're literally scrubbing NOx fumes out there, which are part of the air fuel calculation. Gotcha. Catan, just register that thing in Oklahoma, you'd be good. Brandon, good question. What side of the engine would you want on if you want it before merge? Generally, as I said, I go driver's side. No rhyme or reason. Oh, you know what they say about Texas. That's where all the crap dribbles down from Oklahoma and ends up. Found that my P32 step van had the post-cat O2 sensors wired to the opposite banks from the factory. Vince, I don't know that there's very many people in here that could even pass the visual inspection, much like the actual California emissions inspection. Well, as Mr. Schmidhead says, there are some platforms that have theoretically leaner passenger sides, though on a direct port injected motor, that should not be the case. You're killing me. You're killing me. Well, it's 8:30, guys. Girls in, guys, if there's any girls in here. We are inclusive tuning. Community. It is time to wrap it up for another week. As I said, keep your eyes peeled. I will be putting out the push button start video for the Nova. You get to see me try and light my car on fire. That'll be coming out tomorrow. Then we will be getting into the sniper install this weekend, so probably won't get videos out on that until starting next week. Patrons, keep your eyes peeled. There will be an update video tomorrow to announce the winner of the Holley LS plug kit, spark plug kit. And then I got some other stuff floating around that will be. Oh no, I let some magic smoke out, man. I'm so used to doing that; it's not a big ordeal. But I knew what that was. I knew that there was a ground wire in that mix. I just didn't think anything about it, and I jammed it right in. I'm just glad I didn't burn a fusible link up. Oh man. Okay, well, I'm going to get out of here, get a good night's sleep so I can start tearing a fuel tank out and throwing some fuel injection in this weekend. So, you guys know the drill. ABT, always be tuning.